Welcome to the Soul Touched by Dogs podcast, the show for dog lovers who see dogs not as toys or tools, but wise souls worth our respect and care. I'm Anke Herman, and I'm your host. I talk to pawsome humans, people who do great work for dogs and their people. So come and join us for today's conversation. Hello and welcome, Pilley. I always say it and I always mean it. I'm super excited to have you here.
Oh, thank you, Anka. I'm really thrilled to be here.
Well, we have a really lovely, juicy topic today. But before we get there, let people know where in this wonderful world are you and what's your business with dogs?
Oh, well, my business with dogs primarily is centered around one dog, which is my father's dog, Chaser, who has the largest language learning of any animal in the world. She learned the names of over 1,000 objects. And so she scientifically has the largest language learning of any dog and any animal, just because of the way she can put words together. So I was one of her teachers. She was a family pet. I managed her and my father after their research went globally viral. And that was in 2011. So I've written and produced and presented on sort of every major network and in media outlets sort of globally. And again, that was my father, John Pilley, and his dog Chaser. So I've kind of continued to carry the torch because the methods that they used were kind of groundbreaking. Particularly as far as language learning and animal cognition. But I'm his daughter. I'm John Pilley's daughter, Pilley Bianchi. And yeah, you can find me at pilleybianchi.com on Facebook and Instagram and my website.
I don't even know where to start digging into this.
That was a mouthful. That was a mouthful, I know.
Well, there's several kind of angles I would like to kind of dig in a little deeper. One thing I'm a linguist and I'm nuts about language, and I'm mostly interested in not so much the languages itself, but the method of teaching, the process of learning and teaching language. So I'm like super curious. To start with, like, what even gave you the idea to teach this dog a bunch of words, and how did you go about it? And, when did you realize that Chaser wasn't like your everyday regular dog?
Oh, well, there's a lot to unpack there as well. So my father was the one that taught Chaser all these words. And what inspired him was the work with Lewis Herman and the Dolphins, Sue Savage-Rumbaugh and Kanzi and the chimp, Irene Pepperberg with Alex the parrot. And so these were species that were able to learn words, but they didn't even have an interspecies bond like we do with dogs. So my father was a behavioral psychologist in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and he was fascinated with animal cognition. And it was our early pets, our early dogs, that really inspired him to try to teach our dog human language. And he also determined that it would be infinitely more fun for the students in the lab and classroom to work with dogs than work with rats and pigeons. And so what his original goal was to teach dogs words independent, proper nouns independent from verbs. So what he discovered, though, with our dog Yasha, who was super fast, and Yasha would accompany him on all his white water trips and hiking and windsurfing. So Yasha learned behaviors very rapidly. And we would ask him to go find the paper. And of course, he'd go lickety-split out to the mailbox, all excited, running back. And once he was in the house and my father would ask him to find the paper, it didn't make any sense.
Oh,
It was the behavior of running out, fetching it, and bringing it in that was excitement. And that's what those words meant to Yasha. The paper didn't have value to Yasha because he couldn't play with it. He couldn't chew on it. You know, we didn't throw it and toss it, and it had no value once the paper was in the house. But so for this reason, during his research, for 25 years, he worked with dogs, and they were able to teach them very, very complex behaviors, but they could not isolate the nouns from the verbs. So it was this quest that he was really searching for, and it eluded him. But it was when he started to go to border collie trials in his retirement that he was witnessing the nuance of the sounds that the farmers make for the dogs, and how they could identify these different noises that were so nuanced. But he had the audacity to say to a border collie farmer, you know, science tells us your dogs are really smart, but they don't actually even know their names. They're not able to learn names of people and other things. And the border collie farmer said, whoa, that's what science tells us? Well, tell me why I can call out Jeb out of 5 other dogs and ask him to go find Millie and Tilly, 2 sheep out of a herd, and he'll do it every time. So that gave my father great pause. And in science, there's 2 ways science makes a mistake: by reading too much into their data or too little into their data. And my father had read too much into his data saying that dogs could not learn language. So he determined that words had to have value. And in order for them to have value, they had to have value to Chaser in her world. And it was through play that they had value. And it was just sheer joy of play and learning that she was able to learn over 1,000 objects.
wow. I think learning with play, I think that is really, there's a whole, there's a whole world behind that.
Oh, play is probably the most powerful learning tool there is. And what happens in play, I mean, remember the first time you swam, or you rode a bike, or you threw a frisbee. There's an inherent excitement there. And what you liked, if you liked it, even though you weren't very good at it, you were going to repeat that behavior, because learning anything takes repetition and practice. And so if we're playing with our dogs, we're giving them an opportunity to emit natural behaviors and instincts, like running or finding, using their nose. Playing builds confidence. It's again, it's an innate behavior that all young animals exhibit, even animals in the wild, and which is a tough one to understand, because animals in the wild, if they play, they could attract predators, or they're using valuable energy that they got to conserve because food source isn't right there. But what we've discovered is that play is innately reinforcing, and it allows these animals to be in the moment of joy. And it's just fun. It feels good. Play feels good.
I mean, I don't know. I've seen documentary, when you see little lion cubs and they just play, like it's not, yeah. I mean, that now it makes me curious about dogs who don't play. Right? I think I've seen a lot of dogs who, and I mean, I've had one, not this one, who was sort of quite shut down when he came, and quite sort of traumatized. Like I kind of know there was, stuff going on. And so he never really knew how to play. Right. So other dogs go like, you're weird. And so then there was never that flow. So if
That's
we if we work off the assumption that all animals, or especially all dogs, innately know how to play, is there something that we can do to help a dog sort of rediscover that ability if they've lost it?
You know, that's a great question. So, and we've encountered this with my sister had a rescue dog, and she did not. She was, you know, pretty damaged and introverted, and she did not know how to play. And I would throw a ball at her, and it just hit her off the head. You know, I'm like, oh my God, that's so sad. And but once she came to live at my folks' house and with Chaser, they never played together, and that's another thing. Let me just take a little sidestep there. Not all dogs like to play with other dogs, and when and dogs don't play by themselves very much. They like to have a buddy. They like to have a partner. So, Spirit, who was so damaged, didn't play, but by watching Chaser play and us engaging, she actually gradually learned after about a year, through imitation. And one day she actually ran for the ball herself. And it was sort of like that breakthrough moment. But there's also some people say, well, my dog doesn't like to play. And I had a friend that brought his puppy over here who was only about she was about 7 months old. And she was really sweet. She was a chocolate something or other, but she was a mutt. And she was not a timid dog, but she wasn't assertive either. She was just kind of around. So I didn't have it. He said, she doesn't like to play. And I said, well, how do you play? How do you play with her? And they said, well, we don't. We just bought her all these toys and she's not interested in them. And I was like, wow, okay, well, it's the engagement that's going to be really fun. So I said, all right, let me try something. I didn't have anything in my backyard but a pine cone. And I started tossing it in the air and dropping it and kicking it, and I'd run after it, and then I'd kind of juggle with it, and then I tossed it, and it fell. And Ruthie went for it too. After about a couple of minutes, she went for the pine cone. And then it was at that point that I was like, oh, Ruthie, you have pine cone. I want pine cone. And so then I started chasing her, you know, and the cat and mouse game went on. And I kept saying, oh, good, good, good catch. Or this is, and I kept pairing this play with the name pine cone. You have pine cone. I want pine cone. Catch pine cone. Find pine cone. I would hide it in plain sight from her on a chair. And I'd say, Ruthie, get pine cone, find pine cone. After about, I don't know how long it was, I got tired and we took a break. And Ruthie had not only learned how to play, but she learned the name pine cone.
That's incredible, right? You know, it's like when you think about it, like Duolingo works like that, you know? So like you just play and you repeat.
Right.
You know, it's a good combination. And then if there's little rewards along the way, you know, little dopamine hits by, hey, you know, extended your streak. You raised in whatever the Diamond League. You know, I think at the end of the day, it's the same concept, isn't it?
It is completely, you know, and Ruthie built a bond with me. You know, she was looking at me, she was engaged with me, and she was wagging her tail. So, yeah. And now whenever she comes over, I did this with another dog, but when they come over, they're happy to be here.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. So what's like, apart from not actually playing with the dog, are there other mistakes people make? Like, I don't know, for example, like where I'm going with this is for example, like tug of war, right? And so there will be my dad will play a tug of war with mine, and he will hang on there for dear life, you know. So I will always let the dog win, right? So the dog, I want the dog to walk away with this, because then I notice then they will come back and want more of it, you know.
Exactly.
So whereas my dad feels like, no, 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 no. Like, you know, like you really have to win the thing. So he quite often will pull hard and then the dog loses interest, right?
Well, of course. If I'm always losing, that's why I didn't play basketball. I was terrible at it. I never won. You know, why would you want to do? Yeah. So you're absolutely correct. When we worked with Chaser, we always let her win. You know, there's going to be times where, yeah, you want them to feel good about themselves. And if he wants to win, then he should play tug of war with you. You know, that's more matched. That's not
But I mean,
fair.
yeah, is that like something typical that people do wrong? Like, you know, saying this kind
Yeah,
of,
it
are there
is.
sort of certain things that where people go, oh, well, actually, if you knew that, your dog would be more playful and the relation, because that's the thing, is like if we realize how much play really deepens that bond and creates that relationships and help the
Yes.
dog relax, help the dogs learn. It's almost like,
Yes.
well, that's an art worth mastering, right? So what are other things that people get wrong?
Get wrong with dogs. Well, they sometimes people think that what they're communicating is very, very clear, you know, and it is not. And this was, my father described this, he pretty well. So when he was um, back in the 70s and he would also take students on whitewater trips because he believed if the experience is fun, you know, you're going to have an opportunity to organically learn, which is pretty fun. It feels good. So what he would tell people, they would have two people in a whitewater canoe, and he'd say canoeing requires two people. When you're having trouble maneuvering the canoe, you're going to be certain that your partner is the problem. They most likely are not. So it's like, we get this wrong with dogs all the time. We're like, well, they're not getting it, so they're electing not to get it. But that's not true. Dogs want to please us. They want to get on, but we're not being clear in our communication.
Yeah. Oh, well, look at So, I mean, that's actually a pretty good ground rule to give somebody, right? If your dog doesn't get it, yeah, you know, chances are it's like you're not explaining it well enough.
That you're not. And I talk about this in my book too. It's like back up, reevaluate, and try a different way. It's like, if my father always highlighted, if learning doesn't take place, we have to change the methods. We have to assume the student can learn, and every dog is different. There are some very simple concepts that we can use universally with dogs, but we have to pay attention to the individual dog, you know, and how our behavior affects the dog.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I can't remember. I wish I could remember where I first heard it because I wish I could take credit for it, but I can't. And there was a definition that said like learning and teaching, kind of both side, like two sides of the same coin, is the process of connecting something unknown to something known.
I
And
love that. Yes.
I'm like, this is so spot on because we've all sat through classes where the teacher kind of, you know, connects something known to something known and then you're bored. And, you know, a lot
Right.
of the time when it comes to tech and stuff like that, people go, yeah, well, you know, like, I don't want to Google it because I'm not going to understand the explanation. So when something
Right.
unknown gets connected to something unknown, then you're lost and then you feel really out of your
Uh,
depth. You know, so you need
right.
to
And then you
find that
feel you,
touch point, right? For and that's the thing for each person, but for each dog as well. And my experience for like getting it wrong was that I thought I was taking tiny steps, and then I found some other instructions where I realized, well, actually, I just thrown 10 steps in all at once, you know. And
right.
I thought I
Right.
was being clear. I thought I was taking tiny steps. So it's another
Yeah.
one. Like usually, you know, when it feels hard for either of you, you're probably skipping 10 steps.
Yeah. Yeah. Just back up, stop. And always when you're working with your dog, always end on a high note. You
Yes.
know, have them, if you're unsuccessful with something, okay, we'll stop that, and then do something that they can do, and then, you know, so that everybody can feel good about themselves, because dogs are very, very sensitive to failure. And who isn't, though? You know, we all are, you know. So we have to boost them up and be a little more aware of our actions.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So tell me a little bit about, what's the latest book about? What's the message behind? What's the intention?
Oh, well, my latest book, this was the book my father and I were working on before he passed away. It was the second book that his publisher was interested in, and it was more prescriptive, like how to teach your dog words and why. And because the answer is so simple, it's communication. Why wouldn't we enhance our communication, right? So it had a lot of tutorial stuff, but then once he passed, I didn't know what to do with this book. So COVID happened. I knew there were some really rich stories of experiences that I had with our family dogs and our horses, and just sort of the magic of my dad. There's no family pet was off limits as a science fair project. And so he kind of inspired all of this, us to work with our animals in creative ways and with using only positive reinforcement. So I was trying to figure out the next steps for this book and how to put the book in my voice. And then COVID happened, and I was really inspired by this English book, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie Mackesy. It's sort of a children's book, but it is beautifully illustrated. It's really for adults, and it's got these little isms throughout the book. And I was like, what if I worked with an illustrator and tried to emulate sort of this format so that it was easy to read? It had valuable information, science, philosophy, and methodologies, but it was delivered in a fun format and a little bit cheeky, you know. So it's a little quirky and funny. And I teamed up with New York Times illustrator Callum Heath, and we came up with the book.
I love it. And I mean, for somebody who is so in tune with the importance of play, I would expect your book to be playful. Right?
Playful. That's what it embodied. My father, everything was about play, and he was everything was positive reinforcement. That's the other thing with Chaser is we didn't use treats because your dog can satiate on treats and then the motivation lags. So, but if they don't satiate on play, and yeah, I forgot where I was going with that, but yeah, so learning should be fun. And he also repeatedly said that science needs to work harder to deliver valuable information to the masses in ways that they can understand, we can understand. So if the mind doesn't meet the heart, we're kind of missing the boat, that's a missed opportunity. So that's sort of what this book is. That's why I wrote this book.
Love it. So where can people go and grab a copy and find out more about you, get in touch?
Well, they can find a book pretty much at it's in the US. It's also in the UK. It's coming out in Romania. I don't know if it might be, I don't know if it's available in Spain, but it's called For the Love of Dog. Let's see. I just happen to have a copy.
Yeah, just happen to have a copy, but I would hope so.
For the Love of Dog, just right there on my wall. No, For the Love of Dog, the Ultimate Relationship Guide. So yeah, so you can see this is Callum Heath's illustrations are in the New York Times every day. But so you can find it on Amazon or wherever books are sold online. And in bookstores in the United States. Awesome. Oh, and to find me, you can just go to pilleybianchi.com.
Also, we'll pop that link in the show notes and underneath above, or below or above this video, wherever you watch it. Thank you so much. I'm just gonna actually, I was just thinking, hey, is there a course to learn dog? Like that should be taught as a language, right? So
yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This was absolutely delightful. And yeah, I will pop the link to the book, and do yourself a favor and get a copy if you haven't already. Thank you, Pilley. This was absolutely wonderful.
Oh, thank you, Anke.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review so other dog lovers can find the show. If you haven't already, head over to soultouchedbydogs.com and sign up for weekly doggy cuteness, tips, recommendations, and personal stories to warm your dog-loving heart. And if you know a awesome human you think I should interview, I'd love an introduction. Email me at Anke, that's ANKE, @soultouchedbydogs.com.